Hey, it's Kim, and today we are going to discuss a unit that I believe is heavily underrated and often looked past, and I'm talking about the humble Goblin Archer / Goblin Captain Armed with a Bow. So primarily this is going to be a voiceover with of course a few photos just for you guys to look at while watching the YouTube video. But besides that, y'all can sit back, a hobby, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So getting into Moria, everyone will tell you these guys suck, and that they have no real place within the faction, besides serving as conversions for shamans, prowlers, and warg marauders. Now initially, I didn't run them for over 200 games, since I just listened to common advice and knowledge. It wasn't until I started trying them myself within certain lists that I truly believe they do have a place within the army. And anyone who disagrees, hopefully y'all can convince them after listening to this video. So during one of my hobby paint sessions with Charles Lynn, we were talking about Moria and the faction, and I guess we stumbled upon the Goblin Archer, and I explained why I value these little guys over the spear supports. Now, the way I play Moria is kind of strange. I roughly have 75% shields, 20% spears, and 5% bows. Now, the reason I don't do a 50-50 mix of a spear for every shield is, in my opinion, I believe this goes against the army playstyle of Moria and negates the army bonus, which I'll discuss more in depth in another video. Solely focused on the Moria army bonus, because that too is often looked down upon. But back to my main point. So I value the bows over spears, simply because the bows truly contribute more, in my opinion. When we look at the Goblin Drum example I gave in my list building video, a Goblin Archer has more versatility than the spear support. So in the Goblin Drum example, if you have 2 to 3 goblins guarding it, you do that in case any bow fire kills the drummers. A goblin can immediately pick up the war gear and take the place of the said dead drummer. But being armed with bows, the Goblin Archers can now be supporting the fight from the distance. If they were armed with a shield or a spear, all they would do is sit back by the drum and look at the fight. But having that bow, you have an 18-inch threat range, at least throwing 3 to 4 shots per turn into, let's say, a pesky cav unit that's coming towards you, hoping for a dismount, trying to pick off a banner, or even shoot into a combat with 4 shots. If you have, let's say, an Aragorn had charged a Goblin Warrior in the center line, having those 4 to maybe even 6 goblins shooting into that combat, your intent isn't to kill Aragorn, of course, but if you were to kill that goblin, it prevents him from calling a heroic combat, getting in a better position, or even tagging your characters. Now, many would say the Goblin Archer's shoot value is horrible, and I do agree with that. Having a 5+ is not the best, but my counter argument is, technically speaking, that 5+ shoot value is better than fighting in combat. So, in reality, when you have your goblins fighting in a combat, everyone is fishing for that 6. Especially us Moria goblins, because our fight value is so pathetic. It's fight 2. You're not looking for a 5, you're not looking for a 4. Realistically, most people are looking for that 6 to win the combat. So for me, I would rather fish for a 5+ when shooting, because if I miss, there are no repercussions. In combat, however, when you don't get that 6, or let's say you get that 6 against an elf and he rolls a 6, it goes to the elf now. The repercussions is that the enemy has a chance to now wound you. Having a static 5+ value to hit something is something I value over combat, because once again, if I miss with the bow shot, cool, on to the next turn of shooting. In combat, if I roll a 6 and they roll a 6, cool, I back an inch and I'm potentially going to die. Now, the next point is, people often say the strength 2 bow is weak. Of course it is, it's strength 2. You need 6s to wound most things. Against D7, it's a 6x4. Well, my counter argument to that is you're going to need 6s regardless. Your strength 3 in combat against D6 is still a 6. Strength 2 to D6 is still a 6. So the only difference would be if you were fighting a D7 model in combat, yes, it would be a 6 while shooting the 6x4, but that doesn't change it by that much of a margin, in my opinion. And once again, with shooting, if I don't roll that 6 to wound, well, guess what? There are no repercussions for missing. There's another turn to continue. However, in the combat, once you lose, you're going to back off the inch, potentially taking strikes. And another point I have now for the Goblin Archers is target priority. I think this is a very key part to using the goblins. I'm not telling you guys to grab these goblins and start shooting, expecting to kill all these infantry models. No, it's all about what you choose to shoot with them. So in this case, if there's a mounted character, you are going to spend 2 to 4 turns shooting with the goblins until that character is dismounted. Now, if it only took a turn of shooting, great, the character is dismounted. You could either commit more shots into him, forcing off Might and Fate, or move on, continue dismounting other cavalry models, or shooting, let's say, a Huskarl in the back, or a pesky model. Now, some would say this is a huge waste of points. But for me, let's say hypothetically, there was a Balg on a warg coming towards my main line. Having him dismounted reduces his killing potential drastically. And now, how many goblins would you take? Again, I am not claiming or encouraging maxing out on Goblin Archers, nor am I stating they are superior and like the best unit in the game. What I'm saying is that they have a role in the Moria army list, and in my opinion, in my games I've been playing, 6 to 8 is honestly a very perfect number. There have been in the past 10 games I've played now where these Goblin Archers are easily making up their points by dismounting enemy characters or even killing a cheeky elite troop or 2 in the back. An example was with a game against Dunlandings. We all know the Oathmaker or Oathkeeper, within 6 inches he makes the Wildmen become fearless, which can pose a huge threat to your army, especially when in my list I run a Cave Troll and Warg Marauders and even Giant Spiders. I think anyone who's fearless will throw the biggest bone in your plans. And for this game, I had to shut them down. Now, I took my 6 to 8 Goblin Archers and I continuously shot only at the Wildmen and the Oathkeeper. And in 2 turns of shooting, I got 3 out of the 8 dead, and I think I wounded the Oathkeeper. This forced my opponent to move the Wildmen further away from them, hide behind terrain, not engage my Terror Causers. This alone opened up the freedom for my Terror Causers to get into those combats and positions I wanted. My opponent couldn't dictate where they were going or what combats they were stuck in. It is very frustrating when 2 to 3 Warg Marauders are continuously tagged by a simple Wildman. And in the same fight, there have been games where the Wildmen won the fight and killed the Warg. That is a horrible feeling. I'd rather have the Wild Warg Marauder in a better spot or helping me trap an enemy model to ensure the kill. So those 6 to 8 goblins legitimately won me the game. They suppressed that huge annoyance, giving my other units more freedom on the tabletop. And this wouldn't have happened if I didn't take any shooting. And another point is, why would you not take a few Goblin Archers? Essentially, you are cutting out a whole phase in the game, the shooting phase. Why would you give away a whole phase for nothing? And another point I'm going to make is the commitment of points. Many would say, oh, it's a waste of points. Those 6 to 8 goblins cost 30 to 40 points, which is nothing. Now, I don't know what Moria player will say that's a huge commitment. Maybe besides running the Balrog, that's nothing. Any Moria player can easily afford to put 30 to 40 points, especially in a 600 plus game. At 800s, that definitely should be a given. Now onto the second part of my, video would be the Goblin Captain Armed with Bow. This model is also often looked over for having a shield. Now, of course, the shield upgrade makes the Goblin Captain bump from D5 to D6, which is no laughing matter. The Goblin Captain becomes much more tankier. However, base armor, the Goblin Captain is still D5, which equates to a Goblin warrior with a shield, which again, D5 is a pretty decent, it's a decent defense. Now, if you really wanted to, and you're worried about his defense being a bit too low, yes, give him the bow and the shield. But we're focusing on the bow option. Pretty much he carries the same arguments as I've been saying this whole video, but now he has access to might, which is huge. I feel like in a Moria army, you have more than enough captains and more than enough might that having 2 might solely for shooting purposes should be no issue. And don't forget, he's still a captain. He can still call a march or a move when he has to. But my point is, you're paying a simple 40 points for a cheap D5 character is not a bad bargain. With his might, it becomes much more easier to dismount characters, which again, paying 40 points to stop a Boromir on horse or a Aermir charging at you dismounted, I'd happily pay 40 points for that. The might comes in handy where, let's say you needed a 6 to wound the horse or a 5 to wound the horse, you roll a 4 or a 5, pay a single point of might to dismount that character, which is a point of might well spent. Now don't forget also, as a captain, he will be leading a warband, which ties with the earlier point I made. He could be the one leading those 6 to 8 Goblin Archers. And don't forget, this Goblin Captain, he's still a captain model. You know, he still has 2 strength 4 attacks at a fight value of 3. So what I like to do is keep him on an objective, where I feel like most games, most people send a single warrior, maybe 2, to grab the enemy objective. And as a captain now, as fight 3, he's able to go toe to toe with an orc and a Rohan warrior. And with 2 strength 4 attacks, he has a good chance of killing that warrior or even winning the fight with the might he has. It isn't great, but by sitting on the objective instead of regular goblins, if your army breaks, he won't be fleeing. With a decent courage of 3, bumped up by 4 with the drum playing, he probably will stick on that table and on that objective, hopefully winning you a game. And again, if you had those 6 or 2 to 8 goblins with him, once he passes his courage test, those goblins are staying, thus ensuring you own that objective. And mind you, when he's not sitting alone on the objective, having 2 to 8 goblins with him, that's a lot of bow fire. Even hitting on 5s, I feel like most warriors, 1 or 2 would be a bit intimidated having to walk their way to remove that many Goblin Archers off the objective. Now, a very slight and gimmicky point would be very mission specific on Clash by Moonlight. With the goblins having Cave Dweller, they are not hindered by the 12-inch range restriction. However, they still gain the +1 bonus to wound, making the goblin bows very effective actually at dismounting characters or even picking off those banners in the back. So don't disregard the Goblin Archers. I really do think they have a point and a purpose within the army, and in my recent battle reports, I'm really trying to showcase that with these Goblin Archers. So that pretty much concludes my overall view on the Moria Goblins armed with bows. I really do hope this vid helps with some Moria players understanding why the Goblin Archers / bow captains have some value within the army. Please let me know any counter arguments, any comments. I'm more than happy to hear other people's opinions, or if you have different views of why you should take the Goblin Archers, please, write them down, let me know. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, enjoy.